Okay, we're here to talk about Silo on Apple TV, Season 3, Episode 2, titled It's All Good. This episode written by Shelley Burse, directed by Michael Dinner. As Daniel tries to help Charlotte get her memory back, he learns from her doctor that she is on medication that keeps her memory suppressed. They'll bring it back over time. Even though there's a chance it won't work, the doctor's confident she'll regain her memory. Helen runs into Daniel and learns where his sister is being treated, so she goes to see her, disguising herself as one of Daniel's staffers. Helen tries to get Charlotte to remember that they were working on a story together before her mission in Iran. The doctors get Helen away from her, call for Daniel. Helen tells them they were working on uncovering some massive cover-ups from the government, including the fact that the dirty bomb in D.C. might have been a fake. In Silo 18, Camille learns about the note that Juliet received last episode, and the algorithm tells Camille to be patient in their treatment of her memory loss because Juliet is an outlier. Juliet leaves her apartment with her security officer in tow. She goes to the construction site of the new stairs and runs into Knox, who tells her where to find Martha and also gives her the name Lucas Kyle to start investigating. Juliet meets with Martha, and Martha encourages her to try harder to remember everything because they all need the fighter that she once was. And later, Juliet is able to break free from her security and visit with Sandy, Kennedy, and Danny, who are all fugitives in hiding. They tell her about their helmet that they found with number 17 on it and how that's different from the normal helmets. And Danny thinks that she might be getting the memory loss pills that he was once promised. Camille tracks down Juliet. Juliet agrees to stay in line from now on, but later that night, she spits out her pills the nurse gives her, goes up to the cafeteria to look at the view outside. Meanwhile, Camille learns from the algorithm that there's a tipping point where Juliet being back might cause too much of a problem and might destabilize the silo. We have what we suspected last week, sort of some competing memory loss storylines happening here. So we know
Yeah.
we've got the different point in time storylines, but these are now very clearly memory loss storylines that are in, I wouldn't say in competition to one another. Maybe we find out that they will be relevant to one another at some point, but just sort of interesting how you are dealing with well, we've got people in both timelines that are causing memory loss, people dealing with memory loss. Is this working so far?
Well, in what way, right? So, I mean, in terms of the plot and so on, I read there's a pretty direct connection. I don't know. Do you feel like there's any ambiguity there? In other words, like,
Yeah, I think this episode was clear to us to tell us that we are dealing with the same thing here somehow, at some point in the future, or some point in the past, but we're now dealing with very, very similar circumstances.
yeah, like so the treatment that Dr. Cernovich is giving to Charlotte and the drugs and all of that is now being used within the silo. That was the connection that I drew. And there's some things I want to talk about there in terms of the ethics of what Dr. Cernovich is doing. But to start with your question, I don't know. I mean, so look, first of all, I do want to say like I'm enjoying this season so far, and I'm definitely in to as great of as an extent as I ever have been in terms of feeling invested in what's going on Silo. Um, but much as with season one at times and with season two at times, I started to feel some worry that
Mm.
like, and I'm trying not to because I know at this point how the pacing of this show goes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So I do not expect either of these storylines to resolve
yeah.
until season three, episode 10.
Interesting. Okay.
But I hope I'm wrong. And the worry I have is that there's not enough meat on the bone, as it were, to
Yeah.
extend it out that long. I don't know.
I,
Any
I've
thoughts?
I found myself, I don't know. I found myself more frustrated perhaps with the Juliet memory loss storyline, which again, I thought this was a really good episode in terms of there was a lot of exposition, there's a lot of reintroduction of characters, a lot of getting to communicate with people we haven't communicated with in a couple of years. But the Juliet one, it's like all these things keep coming back to her. All these people keep telling her um, about things that she did, places she was, things she experienced. And also, if Camille and her security are trying to keep a lock on all those things, or trying to keep sort of Juliet under their thumb, like they're really doing a terrible job of it so far. Like really not just doing a good job of and I know that Camille's having these conversations with the algorithm, but it just seems like very lax in terms of the mission that they're trying to accomplish with Juliet at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess here's what I get about that, right? Like, the idea, the plan is that you want to keep Juliet happy, you want her to be this figurehead mayor, um, want her to believe the lies that you're
Exactly.
trying to implant in her, and so on. And, to be more, what's the right word? To treat her like more of a prisoner
Hmm.
explicitly. Well, like, there's obviously a risk of undermining the whole plan there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna treat her functionally kind of like a prisoner, but if she actually feels like she is a prisoner and isn't going along, well, now we're pushing in the direction of having the problem that the algorithm's worried about with Juliet in a meaningful way. So I sort of get that. But it's interesting how her guard or chaperone guy, Deputy Jerry, in this episode, he kind of flips, you know what I mean? Like, I feel
Yeah.
for the guy. He's been tasked with this, and at first he's like, "Ooh, you can't do this and all that," but then by the end, he's like, "Look, no, you're my mayor. If you need to sneak off and have some alone time, then let me know or whatever." And it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
so okay, is Jerry, because from his perspective, I got his initial position, even of how it might put himself at risk, but so now is he somehow come around to saying he will take that risk? Curious about that. I mean, I guess so, because in order for the narrative to really move forward, Juliet's going to have some degree of a freedom of movement and things like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It seems like Jerry, he says his name is Jerry, Deputy Jerry, or security guard Jerry, whatever his name is. And I didn't note the name of the girl who got the tattoo that matches Juliet. So she has a
Oh, I think it
conversation
was
with
I think it was Evelyn.
Evelyn.
I could
Okay.
check my notes to be sure, but
Yeah.
off the top of my head, I think that was it. You think she's going to be important?
Well, I just think that they're representative of, there are a lot of people that are very eager to believe in Juliet for what she can do, what she has accomplished, what she may know. And so these people represent, we obviously know about Martha and Knox and Sandy and Danny and Kennedy, but it seems like they're building a coalition for her of people that want to believe in her and want her to lead. Um, and so there's just sort of that keeps growing each episode.
Yeah. You know what? Now you made me think about her again. I bet that Evelyn is going to be important. I bet that young woman is going to be important.
I think she
And
might be. Yeah.
and I did not write about her in my recap on this week's episode. But whatever. I'll circle back around when she becomes important later. I'm like, oh, you remember her?
Remember
So
her? Yep.
podcast is good for this sort of thing, to make me maybe realize that she probably will be more important than I was thinking, because like to this point, I feel like she hasn't really done anything all that noteworthy,
Yeah.
So she's kind of a fangirl sort of thing. She comes across, I think, as a little bit annoying, I think even to Juliet.
Yeah.
So, there's also a way in which that could lead in the direction of that relationship flipping or something. You know what I mean? Like it could lead in the direction of her and her friends ultimately feeling betrayed by Juliet, and flipping from that kind of loyalty to hatred or something. And
Yeah.
she probably will matter. She's been the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I'm curious in terms of relatively minor characters mattering. This one I am on top of. Orla from Supply was not in episode two. She was in episode one. We were introduced to her in episode one. Orla, right? She's now the Shadow in Supply. She's going to be taking over. And the last
Yes.
we saw of her, she was talking to a guy who I take it is her boyfriend or husband, or I don't know. I don't know the guy's name even. I'm not sure if he's been named as a character. Um, Talking about two things. One is the vitamin D shipment that's going to take several days.
Hmm.
And the other is she says something like, this is back in episode one, but I don't think we talked about it last week. She says something like, I think I figured out how, quote, she is doing it, something like that. And she's going to look into it. She's like, I'll let you know what I find later or whatever. which I'm connecting up to what she said to Juliet in the uh, season three premiere about things going missing from critical supply or whatever, like
Yeah.
stuff that's been there from the very beginning of the silo, some's going missing or whatever. I think that's what she's looking into. And I'm mentioning all this, reminding people of all of this, because here in episode two, what we do get is apparently she's missing. Thoughts about Orla?
Yeah, so I that storyline of her missing. So this is we've got Paul involved here. We've got her missing, and we see at the end of this episode, obviously, this vitamin D crate or barrel that's being moved up the. Yeah, there are things working. There are things working behind the scenes, but sort of at the behest of who? Is it the behest of Charlotte? I mean, not Charlotte, at the behest of Camille, at the behest of the algorithm. How are these things being manipulated? But Orla, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to place what role she has in this whole scheme that's being put together.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think there are two separate things here. And my I was kind of running them together in my mind a little bit. I went and rewatched that scene from episode one of the season because in that scene she does mention the quote unquote vitamin D shipment, and I'll say about more about that presently and how I'm interpreting that. But then the other thing seems to
Yeah,
be something else, and it's that second thing that I'm connecting to the fact that she's missing because I think it's clear if you rewatch that scene, she's not involved in the vitamin D shipment other than like
yeah,
signing off on making it happen or something like that. So why has she gone missing? I think that has to connect with who's been stealing stuff from supply.
hmm,
Who is she? She refers to as she, but I don't think we know who it is.
yeah, yeah,
And that's one question I wanted to kind of tag here. And I don't know, maybe that relates to Lucas Kyle in some way, wherever he is. I mean, of course, that'd be the wrong pronoun for Lucas Kyle, I think. Um, but who knows what's happened in the past 90 days. Anyway, and I'm struggling to put a finger on who else it could be. I mean, Martha, of course, but
yeah.
maybe anyway. Um, and then the other thing, but okay, first, so before we move to the vitamin D shipment, any further thoughts on that stuff in terms of who's stealing stuff from supply?
Now, it just seems to be that there are several factions. There's obviously the Camille and whoever's working with her. There is Martha Knox and who sort of falls under that surely that group. There is the fugitive group. There is, sort of curious where Sheriff Billings and his wife land. So yeah, it's just kind of they're setting up these pop algorithm side, and then there is a we want to know more. We think that we should have more these different groups, and so yeah, just sort of I think they're positioning so that we don't know exactly where all these things are coming from or where the schemes are being initiated at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I just found myself wondering, like, is there someone I'm not thinking of? Is there some other woman in the silo I'm somehow forgetting? Is there someone who would do something like kidnap Orla or kill her or something like
Yeah,
that? And no one's coming to mind from like because if she was referring to Martha, I don't like Martha wouldn't hurt her. I'm confident in that based on what we
yeah,
know about
yeah.
Martha. Is there someone else I'm sort of forgetting about? I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes. On the
Yeah,
other
me
thing,
too.
on the other thing, I think it's pretty clear that the quote unquote vitamin D is memory suppressing drugs are going to put in the water supply. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there ambiguity here? This is something we said we are going to talk through a bit more in another way as
Yeah,
well. What are your thoughts here, Ryan?
this is the worst kept secret. Yes, the vitamin D is something that's going to go in the water that's going to, or well, yeah. So I guess the question is going to or could be something that will suppress memory throughout the silo.
Yeah, it seemed like this was maybe from talking briefly before we started recording what we might not be entirely on the same page on. Maybe we are, but we agreed to talk it through on the air, as it were, because right towards the end of the episode, maybe it's even the very end of the episode. Yeah, I don't know what I think of this either. These scenes with the algorithm talking to Camille they almost feel a little bit too on the nose for me, spelling things out. But at the same time, I think it's important to bear in mind, I know algorithm could be lying. It could be lying. You know what I mean? Um,
I think that's true. I absolutely think that's true.
but so this is where it ends up saying, oh, well, look at this chart. There are these two lines, and if they intersect, Juliet will have outlived her usefulness. Um, but of course, if we just like killed her or took her out or whatever, that could also be catastrophic. So that would be bad. Um,
All right, so here's my impression of that scene, or what I think I heard, or what I think I believe that the algorithm is referencing in that moment. So it's showing Camille that there is a tipping point of the Silo being content that she is there, and being happy about her presence and her being back. But there also comes a point where I guess there's a sense diminishing returns where that wouldn't matter as much as the her the risk that her presence causes. And so if there's a problem with her being there, then there gets to a point where they need to, I don't know if it's eliminate her, put her under, completely wipe her memory, whatever it is. But if Juliet is not there, that event would destabilize the silo. And my take on it was, if that happens, if they have to eliminate Juliet or if they have to remove her from the equation, that's when they would wipe the memory of everyone in the silo using this vitamin D. That there's a contingency plan in place, but they're not putting it into action yet. I don't know if that's how you read that scene.
no, yeah. So this is where we're interpreting it differently because how I read the scene was that the plan is already in motion to put the memory suppressing drugs into the water supply. And the algorithm was saying that it hopes that that happens before they get to some kind of crisis point with
Mm,
Julia, right? And what I wondered is, I mean, there are indications that they did this before, 140 years ago or whatever. That's another thing in here. Like, I guess it's pretty well confirmed at this point that the before time stuff is like 350 years ago or more, a little more.
yeah.
But and like again, unless the algorithm's lying, and then there was the guy from the mines too. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it gets a little bit. This show sometimes pushes me in this direction, and I don't know what to do about it because I feel like with the mine stuff, I'm starting to get close to like, well, maybe God made the Earth with the dinosaur fossils there. You ever think of that? You know, and, um, which I wouldn't buy at all in the real world, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. Focusing on that, focusing on that last scene, I thought what the algorithm was saying was we're already doing this,
Okay.
and we just hope that things don't come to a head with Juliet before that happens. Now, that still leaves me with the question of, well, what exactly does that look like? Is it a lower level amount, and when like would a lower level amount because I don't know if it would make sense to me to just like completely wipe the memories of everyone in the silo. You know what I mean? But would a lower level amount just kind of like make everyone's memories, fuzzy or something like that? Like they'd still kind of remember each other who they are, but everything would just be a little bit nebulous or something. That feels like it would be more in line with what the plan is here in terms of putting the stuff in the water supply. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is more of a break glass in case of emergency thing. But it read to me like they're already doing it. So
Yeah, so I see that, so that makes sense to me. The idea that we can already see that Juliet is causing a problem just by the fact of her being an outlier and her remembering certain things, and so we're going to take the step to, in some capacity, suppress people's memory or wipe their memory. Let's do the Men in Black sit thing where we set the time and date and hold them, and that's how we manipulate their brains at this point. So we're going to do it. We've got a nuclear option that we're not going to use yet, but we're going to do this in hopes that they forget about what Juliet did, and everybody's memory sort of goes back to, okay, we don't need to focus on her as this savior or as this redeemer or as this hero that went out and came back after she went to clean. So yeah, they could certainly be doing it already, which is why the shipment is moving up the silo.
yeah, curious to see what happens there. Some of the other stuff, man, this is probably a good time to work in. The algorithm says something about like six silos being reset. This one was reset 140 years ago. Probably worth noting that again, I can't fully get over the fact that part of me has been playing with this idea and maybe it hasn't really been that long. And maybe I do have to give that up by the end of this season because all indications are it has been that long, but uh, we'll see. But let's go from that um, to the before times, which I guess that's the lingo that the kids are using. I don't know if that's in the
Yeah.
books or what, but that's people on the internets are calling it the before times. So I've decided to just follow that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's more a social media creation.
More of a social media creation. Yeah, fair enough. Um, but what we get here is Daniel discovering that his sister Charlotte's memory loss isn't just accidental. It's not a direct cause of whatever happened in Iran, even. It is a part of the treatment that this guy, Dr. Victor Cernovich, right? And there's no vowel after the C at the beginning of his name. I had to like triple check that when I was writing my recap. Um, Dr. Cernovich, another actor who you surely recognize from somewhere, is Matt Craven, I think his name.
Hmm.
Um, but he apparently, and they don't spell this out in quite as explicit of detail, but this is what I gather. And you tell me if you disagree at all with how I'm interpreting this. That he's been working on a treatment for trauma, where the idea is we give you this drug that pretty much wipes your memory. You don't even really remember who you are. You don't remember who other people are, all this kind of stuff, like what we're seeing with Charlotte, right? But, it's not actually fully erasing things. Like there's still kind of stuff there in your subconscious, whatever you want to call it. But so the second part of the treatment is to bring that back, as it were, by you being told stories about your own life. And insofar as they're true, they're going to like ping on those residual structures of memory that are still there. So, at least as he puts it to Daniel, it's like, okay, it is, you are going to remember, quote unquote, for real. I might question that metaphysically, but we're not going to bring back the trauma, right? Is that how you read the idea here?
Yeah, I think that's how I read it. So that there's something that Charlotte and others have gone through. They think it would be best if they suppress everything, and then in this drawbridge analogy, only bring certain things back across the drawbridge, leaving the trauma, the disturbing things. Yeah, and then we sort of have to leave, the idea of what else are they leaving behind, or are they not choosing to bring across when they bring stuff back? Even I think Daniel brings up the question of could we lie to them when we recover these memories? So I think you've got the nail on the head. Yeah, the question remains of what are they actually doing when they develop this kind of brain manipulation technology?
Yeah, so I kind of want to separate it out in terms of two questions because you're right. Well, could they lie? And he goes, oh, I guess you could. Like, as always, some kind of moron or idiot who's like, oh, I never thought about that before. Wow, I guess you could, but it'd be hard. Um, and also the fact that the government is implicated in some ways, and the Iran mission was secret, and there's all sorts of reasons to be suspicious along those lines. But even if we were to put all of that aside, what do you think of the very idea of the treatment? Because my initial reaction was a moral or ethical objection to the idea of the treatment, even just on the face of it in terms of if he's, completely in good faith telling the truth about. But I did have to think about it more, as a treatment for PTSD and so on. And,
Mm,
maybe the things in my life that come to mind wouldn't hit the level of that sort of trauma. And there are some kind of indications when Charlotte starts freaking out where, would she even be able to live and function in light of this, or the difficulty of that kind of working through the difficulty people do face with PTSD. Um,
yeah.
But I don't know. So I'm
Yeah, I
curious,
think,
what do you think on that
yeah,
level?
my first thought was absolutely object to this kind of treatment, especially if it's treatment being administered to someone that is unaware that it is happening, right? So there's not really
Yeah.
any say that this person has, obviously. And even, as you said, if this person is acting in 100% good faith, if it's someone that you trust, if it's someone that you believe is has the best interest in mind of the person they're administering this treatment to, what other things could happen or what other incentives could introduce themselves to make it not be the case in just a moment's notice or in with the just sort of the slightest things changing? Or how do you know that you will always be aligned as the family or friends that want certain things to come back, but the doctor doesn't believe that they should come back? Well, this contributed to trauma, or this, is attached to the trauma. So there's just going to be these real ethical issues about how this works and who is right in terms of administering this stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, there's also a question here that goes to the level of personal identity, and that's,
Hmm.
in some ways, I found this to be like the most interesting part of the episode, at least philosophically, at least, is
Yeah.
pinging on that part of my brain, because there's a way in which Dr. Sinovich is recognizing that, where he's basically giving Daniel the line that we are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Okay, well, now if you're taking some of those stories away, well, am I still me? He's like, okay, I mean, like, all right, you're only getting rid of the really bad stuff. So maybe I'm happier, but how do we weigh that against, as you said, in particular, insofar as I think this is being done without Charlotte's consent,
Yeah.
there might still be a question of whether it's okay, even if you did have that kind of consent, but in particular, without it, yeah, I still find myself landing on that sort of conclusion about it, even as, like, even if they were only doing what Dr. Cernovich said they were doing, right? Which is someone has this traumatic event
Hmm.
and severe PTSD. And so the idea is to erase the trauma, but in order to erase the trauma, we have to erase everything. No, not erase quite, but however they think this works, we're going to make you forget everything, and we're going to bring some back, but not the bad part. I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. And then, even if you were willing to swallow that, which apparently in the world we're watching on Silo, the TV program, people are, at least to a sufficient extent for it to continue and then become a part of what's at the disposal of people in the silo in the future, where there is clearly being used for purposes that we would want to say are unethical, nefarious, what have you. I think, you know what I mean? Or I'm curious to see if the show ends up giving us more to work with in terms of a potential kind of consequentialist arguments there, right? Like, what is the justification for the silos? Or what do they think justifies the silos?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not just the existence of the silos, but all the stuff we've seen within the silos in
Yeah.
terms of deceiving people or whatever else. They can't know about the other silos and all of that kind of stuff. And we talked about this last week. I did go back and double check from the season two finale what Bernard says to Juliet, and I rewatched that scene. Um, he says that he knows who, but he doesn't know why, and he doesn't care at that point because he's just discovered about the safeguard and all that kind of stuff. Like he's at that
Yeah.
point landed on saying, "Look, I know who. I don't care why."
Yeah.
Which kind of stood out to me because I'd been thinking about the question I was just saying before. That is a big question I want an answer to, but
Yeah.
it's clear that in Bernard's mind, at least in that moment, whatever attempted justification the Who would make, like he doesn't care. Screw you.
Yeah.
No, there is no
I,
justification.
I think, and maybe I should even say that I predict that we will get an answer to both of those questions this season, both the who and the why. And then my, again, uninformed prediction for season 4 will be the question of what do you do once you have that knowledge? Again, that's without having read completely to the end of this, but I think based on what, I have seen, what I have heard, what I have consumed, I think we will know who and why this season. I'll be very curious to see how they unroll that, but that's my prediction at least.
Yeah, I would share that prediction. I do wonder if we're going to get as detailed of an answer to the why in particular as I want.
Mm,
Hopefully we do by the time the whole series is over, at least, because I find myself thinking back to some of the stuff where I'm like, did we get a sufficient answer to why they do the cleaning? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think we
yeah,
did. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to forget Silo. I still want to understand why are they sending out people out to clean? Because you could kill them in other ways. You know what I mean? So that lingers to me as a question of like, is it just on the face of it? Like, oh yeah, we actually do want people to clean the window every once in a while.
Yeah,
But the problem is if you do need the window to be cleaned from the outside every now and then that would require that every now and then someone's going to be, executed. So yeah, I want more on that still. I don't know, but I think in the broad strokes, yeah, and that's where to go back to what I said before. I don't think it's going to be till the end of the season. I'm more worried about, and there's probably enough there in the before time storyline to slowly work towards it and get there in the end of the season. I'm a little bit more worried about whether there's enough in the plot in Silo 18 to drag it out for the whole rest of the season, which I think they're going to do. It feels to me like things should come to a head more quickly.
yeah.
So,
I
if it, go
I
ahead.
feel like again with what knowledge I have, having read books one and two, but not three, and we discussed last week how I am unaware if this storyline in Silo 18 is a part of a future story or just a creation to have something go along with the timeline that we are currently in with Daniel and his situation. Yeah, it is tough to try and predict what is going to happen there, and is there enough there for us to be satisfied with it all. I feel that the Daniels storyline and that part of the season is going to become pretty propulsive pretty fast, unless I'm just completely off base of how they are going to choose to line up these seasons. I think there's a lot of things coming there.
Yeah. So maybe that'll take over more. Maybe it'll take over more like time wise even, and maybe that'll
Yeah,
be okay. But yeah, I mean, you put your finger right on my worry, and I haven't read the books at all. But there is part of me from what I understand about it that my fear is they just created this whole storyline in the silo for this season so that Rebecca Ferguson and others could still be in the show,
yeah,
and that it's just going to be a matter of creating a really protracted kind of loop that closes itself so that by the end of the season they could be back in line with the books or something like that, if that makes sense. So like,
yes,
yeah, like I hope that that's not quite how it is. I hope it feels like it justifies itself. I am I'm entertained by it enough so far. It just
yeah,
feels like it should be coming to a head by the middle of the season, and then I'm afraid they're going to drag it out for the whole season. And probably they will, and just take that as a warning, given how the show's generally paced. It'll probably go the whole season
yeah. I
before
think I
it
think I
resolves.
share that I share that concern and share that not worry, but thought that we will end up more compelled by, interested in one of the timelines over the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, like if it's entertaining enough, no big deal. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
if they're dragging it out over the course of the whole season, but that feels okay and feels like there's enough there for them to work with, and we're entertained enough throughout those parts of the show, then good. Then they've done their job well. Just a little bit of a worry in the back of my mind. Let's see, a couple of things to be sure to hit on before we wrap up. You mentioned in your summary, but we didn't go further about the outsiders and the meeting with Kennedy. I guess I just wanted to note that it did stand out to me how they feel closer to the actual truth of things than I might have thought. They're not just wholly misguided and thinking that it's safe outside, although they still think maybe it is. They broke into IT to get the helmet to compare it with the helmet that Juliet had on, and they've noted the 18 and the 17, and they seem really close to the thought that there are other silos.
Yes.
Um, and Kennedy's put together that they've been giving the memory suppressing drugs to Juliet, and I don't know. I mean, I'm heartened by that at least a little bit, that they're not actually still thinking, oh, well, it must be safe outside. Oh, and the fact that the writing on Juliet's sign was not her handwriting, right? So it feels like they're really close to the inference that there is another silo, and are not just going to idiotically run out to their deaths through another rebellion. So we've got that going for us.
Yeah, I'm curious when that layer of memory or that sort of spark comes. She, clearly has caught these little glimpses of Martha, glimpses of Bernard, a glimpse of Solo or something in that silo that leads her to trying to explain it or trying to put these pieces together now that they have a helmet with a number 17 on it.
Yeah. I feel like the way it needs to go is Juliet needs to ultimately get the help of these people and probably also Lucas and maybe whoever was involved with Orla's disappearance or whatever. I don't know. But she's going to need the help of some of these people to enact the plan, which should be to kind of covertly disable the safeguard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That should be their ultimate plan. I mean, I guess she has to remember that that's the thing that she needs to do. But she knew that was the thing she wanted to do when she came back at the end of season two. Rewatch that scene with Bernard, and when they're talking, like Bernard's ready to kill himself because he just learned about the safeguard. Juliet's like, "I figured out how to turn it off, Bernard." It's really almost that straightforward. Um, let's see, what was the other thing? We're jumping back and forth a little bit. Oh, we didn't really talk about Helen sufficiently, I think, in the before time storyline. Um, her line about questioning whether the dirty bomb in DC even actually happened stands out. Charlotte contacted her because of worries about the whole Iran mission and all of that. I don't know. Further thoughts on this front?
Yeah, I mean, it does go all the way back to that last scene we saw in season two. We see a magazine cover. I think the title of that magazine cover is, "Is this the new normal?" With someone in a hazmat suit. So I mean, there's sort of this prevalent idea, this popular idea that and probably witnessed idea that this thing happened. And so if people witnessed something taking place and it didn't actually happen or didn't come from Iran, well, then yeah, we're in the midst of some kind of huge potential cover up. If someone else did that, maybe it's our own government did that. Again, I don't know any of these things. This is not into spoiler territory, but whatever they're trying to uncover seems massive. But that's the implication that they didn't. If all of this has been about retaliation for some event, but that event didn't happen, I'd be very curious to see where Helen and Charlotte take this.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's the thing though. You would think though that there must be witnesses to this, people who experienced this,
Yeah.
if it did happen. So, like, is there also a meaningful lack of such firsthand accounts or something like that that's feeding into Helen's question in the background? I wonder if we'll find out more about that.
Well, I think that there's no doubt that about the fact that it did happen, but maybe who was the cause of this thing that happened, right? It's
Maybe
it's
that.
easy to blame Iran for it, but is that the truth?
You know what, Ryan? Maybe they just set off 850,000 fireworks for the 4th of July during a heat wave.
Could be, could be.
You know, maybe. I know that sounds implausible and no one would ever do that, but there was a dirty bomb. Dirty bomb. The air is unbreathable. Blame Iran. Anyway, sorry. Uh, you noted something about objects from the past and being part of Cernovic's treatment. I think that is worth noting. Maybe that does relate to the Pez dispenser. I mean, certainly you could make a broader connection between the whole thing about banning relics within the silo. If they've done this to people, then you know, relics that might, kind of ping you to remember things. They would want to get rid of those. Why that would extend more broadly to history. There's this element too that we shouldn't forget as a question. We know there are other silos. We don't know what happened in all of them. We kind of know what happened in Silo 17, but some of the stuff in Silo 18, I'm not sure would have held in others. Like the stuff about erasing their own history and all of that. Arguably that would be maybe that's something you would only do after there has been what the algorithm calls a reset.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And if there are, for some reason, 51 silos, I think that was the number we got mentioned in season two. Um, if we believe the algorithm and saying that six of them have been reset, well, then and that includes silo 18. And then there's silo 17, where they had a successful rebellion and everyone died. So that takes us to seven, right? But then what happened in the other 44?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, are they on the original plan or are they all dead too? You know what I mean? So lots of questions here. All right. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here today?
No, I think that is about does it for me.
All right, sounds good. We will be back next week talking about Silo Season 3, Episode 3. Hopefully you'll join us. And hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave a good rating review wherever you're listening. If you're on YouTube, do hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. Make sure to check out tvobsessive.com. Got written work on all sorts of TV shows there. Ryan's currently writing on House of the Dragon. I'm writing on Silo this season if you want to read my recaps. And there's other stuff going on too. We're on top of Cape Fear. And I'm writing on Sugar. Well, there's other stuff. Go check out the site. If you want to follow us on social media, search for TV Obsessive and you should find us. And as for the podcast, we'll be back with you next week.
Yes, we will. We will see you then.